hope you're all in a good mood this morning. I know I am. The stocks are way up, so now I'm only 40% down for the year. So yay for me. I'm Matt Youngman. I'm a director with Eide Bailly, and I'm joined by Tracy Newick, President and Chief People Strategist of TGHR Solutions, and Sean Connery, CNO and co-founder of Orbis Solutions. Our goal is to finish our presentation in 40 to 45 minutes and leave the remaining time for Q&A. Eide Bailly. We wanted to take a moment to thank Eide Bailly and Annette, who was our controller this morning, for their assistance in putting this webinar on. You will be receiving a follow-up email from Eide Bailly with a link to a recording of this presentation. Yesterday, my friend Jackie Miller was giving me, I guess I can't swear, grief on why this webinar is not worth CPE credit. So in her honor, I thought it would be fun to go through the same process and ask 3 questions during my presentation to make sure you are paying attention. So the first question is the following. And when Annette showed, when your surf popped up, there was an acronym in that red box on slide 1. So here's a hint. The first letter is a character in all the James Bond movies. You got that? And the second letter is just the and sign. And the third letter is a letter of what I'm making of myself right now. So go ahead and take about 5 to 10 seconds and jot your answer down, or you know where to type it in. Here's our agenda. Basically, I have 3 Vegas strong professionals who want to talk to you about how COVID-19 has impacted your business. What we'll do is we'll have you do a self-assessment on which of the 3 health situations your company is currently in, and then we'll drill down from a process, people, and technology standpoint to hopefully provide you with some ideas on how to improve your situation. So let's go through the 3 categories. Do me a favor and please take a moment to assess where your company currently is. Are you in the ship is sinking category, the ship took on water but is still afloat category, or the ship weathered the storm and is still operating effectively? Myself, I've been in organizations for all 3 health situations, including, unfortunately, the ship is sinking. I started my career with KPMG for 5 years, and then worked at little companies like Petco, Charlotte Russe, and Amazon. For you fellas out there, Charlotte Russe is a women's retailer. And don't laugh, this is where I first heard the word pleather. What that is a combination of plaid and leather. It's cheap but sexy, and no, I did not wear it. So what I'd like to do is share my experiences, lessons learned, and strategies that our senior management executed on during these situations. Here are the 5 sinking ship focus categories. Unfortunately, probably the best examples here in Vegas would be our restaurants and bars, which are really, struggling very much. Cash is king. First and foremost, you need to focus on the here and now by only doing a 90-day forecast. Some recommendations on the accounts payable. Prioritize based on keeping the company going. To me, it's vital you maintain inventory and keep all services up that are running to support your clients and your customers. Number 2 is pay a little to each vendor versus deciding which ones to pay 100% or not. Finally, negotiate payment plans. Give yourself as much time as possible between payments and even offer something in return, like a higher interest rate or a fixed dollar amount. Lastly, max out your credit line. I can't impress upon the importance of this. If the bank finds out you're struggling, then they'll either reduce it or they'll cut it off. Financing strategies. I'm mainly going to focus on the SBA PPP loan program. Obviously, I think all of you have been in contact with that by now. You've looked at it, but I want to just point out that, it is a short-term solution for you, and you need to be planning accordingly. The other thing is the CARES program is a lot more than just a PPP program. If, for example, you didn't qualify or you believe the forgiveness percentage will be very low, there are other avenues out there for you, including like employee retention credits and other options. And if you want to learn more about that, please don't hesitate to contact me. On debt restructuring, our recommendation is be proactive. Speak to lenders, discuss your options, request to extend or renegotiate your debt covenants. The bottom line is you guys are in this ship together, so you both have a lot to lose, so just be proactive. Basically, the overall theme is you're just looking under every rock to increase cash. With regards to third-party advisors, I believe turnaround advisors can definitely add value. From my own experience, they can help you avoid bankruptcy. They can help you with personal guarantees. They can definitely help with AP prioritization. But most importantly, they do have access to money. Regarding bankruptcy, our recommendation, don't wait. Go see a lawyer, gain an understanding of your options. You're basically, as an executive in this company, adhere to the theme, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Staffing. Obviously, this is the most important and sensitive of the processes. We have several recommendations. Have senior management take a 30 to 40% pay cut to show your employees that they are committed to saving the company. Through my own experience, please don't fall into the trap of laying off employees who makes the most money. Instead, focus on keeping, who is vital to the day-to-day operations. These usually are the managers because they're willing to roll up their sleeves. For employees that are let go, please treat them with respect. Have them leave the right way so, eventually you'll be hopefully hiring them back. But most importantly, right, it's just the right thing to do. And finally, we recommend you look at outsourcing staff for 2 reasons. One, it's an immediate backup plan if employees leave. They recognize the situation you're in, so they probably will be looking. It's also just a prime avenue to decrease your overall employee expenses because you're not paying for benefits and you can reduce HR and other related costs. The final process is sales. Here's just some ideas on how to increase sales in the short run. One average is leverage your AR, increase a discount for early payment. Special sales to increase short-term sales. That's where you basically go out and offer your inventory, 50 to 60% off if they pay upon delivery. That way you can leverage your inventory. And if you have a sales force, offer higher commissions to your sales force so they can, so they can basically get that cash in. With that, we'll move on to ship took on water, but still afloat category. So, we'll stop for question 2. Are you listening, Jackie? So I did a couple trial runs on this with my friends Paul Soth and Jason Dellis, and they both said I sounded like a robot. So here's question 2. Who starred in the movie I, Robot? So jot that down, take less than 10 seconds. This is really important because we're going for a fictitious CPE here. Okay? The first section, cash is king. Basically here, the objective is to take a more broader view. Once again, I want to point out the SBA program is just short term. So therefore, my recommendation would be to go more of a 6-month forecast versus 90 days. Definitely recommend taking the same AP prioritization approach that I mentioned in the ship is sinking. And finally, do a cost analysis by speaking, speak to your department heads, senior management, and even the board of directors to get their input on how to reduce costs effectively. Board of directors are very astute in this area. In this area, ask questions like, how has our business changed because of COVID-19? What has changed with our customers and our clients? Should we change our go-to-market strategy in any way? It's important you perform analysis on which revenue streams are producing the highest margins and which revenue streams are more likely to be successful in this new world. One recommendation, this expense reduction committee. I think it's a great idea to take how to get all your employees involved, try to get ideas, provide spot bonuses for the best ideas, let them know that you're all in this together. For it regards to vendors and supply chain, prioritization is everything. Determine who your important vendors and suppliers are. Ask for concessions where you can. And especially with vendors where you have options, where there's a low barrier to get a replacement, you can be much more aggressive and proactive in what you're asking for. Lastly, I think we all need to learn from COVID-19 in relation to having a part or all of your inventory in China. Certainly recommend that you have alternatives in the US or at least in North America. Under staffing, one recommendation is incentivize management by requesting them to take a 20% pay cut in return for equity. It's a great way to lower your expense structure and incentivize your people and your management on up in the right way. Always be looking to outsource. It just makes your company more nimble to react to changing market conditions, especially obviously with the potential return of COVID-19. Now is a good time to reassess and make sure your risk model is in alignment with your current situation. You have a virtual workforce right now, but I believe when everyone returns, a big portion of your workforce is going to be inquiring whether they can work from home part-time or even full-time. So we, thank you Goose, that's from Top Gun, believe it's here to stay. Cybersecurity strategy is an obvious process to review, and that's why 007 will be speaking later on. The virtual workforce is also changing your control environment. My recommendation is if you haven't documented your processes now is the time to do it, because most likely they've been changed, or at least changed in some part due to COVID-19. So now we'll move on to the happy category. As you can tell, it's a cruise line. Hopefully it's not a hospital ship. This represents a significant growth opportunity for you. So, Nanette just pinged me, so it's time for question 3. So in deference to 007, who is my favorite Bond lady? So it's multiple choice. Barbara Bach from The Spy Who Loved Me, Holly Berry from, I don't even remember because she's so hot, or Pussy Galore from Goldfinger. So the man with the golden touch. So that was for Chris Wilcox, the Vegas managing partner, who will be firing me at the end of the day. So let's move forward. Cash is king. I know this is redundant, but I come from the retail industry. So it's like location, location, location. It's redundant, but it's basically, it's so important. In this one, we recommend a 2-year forecast, as it should include the M&A and strategic investments you have in mind. Also increase your line of credit. You have low interest rates currently and a stronger balance sheet versus other industries. So now's a great time to do that. It's also a great time to revisit your strategic vision. This really truly represents a unique opportunity if your competitors or strategic partners didn't weather the storm as you. Low interest rates, low valuations. They definitely recommend an immediate growth opportunity. Just always remember, great growth via acquisition is so much quicker than organically. I've been through 12 transactions myself and can speak clearly to that. The go-to-market allows you to take a fresh look at how you can make more money. It also, just as a side note, it also represents a unique opportunity for a CFO to take a lead from a strategic perspective. You know, my recommendation, set up an offsite meeting with the C-level suite and the board of directors and talk about these subjects. You know, one thing I've learned is if you are part of the strategic vision, then you can also be an integral part of executing on that vision. Sales analysis. This is the time to strategize about sales. Don't forget this. A lot of companies do not do this. Perform customer reviews, you know, assess the probability from both a growth and risk perspective. I mean, the bottom line, the world has changed due to COVID-19. So it's also a good time to evaluate potential channel partners. Lastly, on the improved data-driven decision capabilities, I recognize this is a shameless plug, but Eide Bailly acquired a data analytics company about 6 to 9 months ago, and I've seen this add a lot of value to our clients. I mean, I only wish I had that kind of visibility and information back when I was just an average CFO. The final process is, of course, staffing. As I previously mentioned, the virtual workforce is here to stay, at least in part. So as CFOs or C-level folks, you need to review each accounting, finance, and treasury process to make sure it still works via the virtual model. Definitely recommend focusing on controls. Also, COVID-19 does represent a unique opportunity to enhance your company culture. I mean, take advantage of this. Look at additional benefits which can increase employee morale but cost very little. I just met with the proper social distancing, an organization that offers employees mortgage banking services through their company at a very low cost. And I believe there are several other opportunities for companies to consider. Finally, always be looking to outsource or even lease your employees, which is becoming more popular. It's at least worth doing the analysis. So that concludes my part of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end of our presentation. So now, oh wait, hold on. I'm sure you're all dying to know the answers to the 3 questions. So first was Q&A, was in the red box. Will Smith is the star of iRobot. And number 3, my favorite Bond lady, Barbara Bach. When that movie came out at my age, smoke show. So with that now, I'll turn it over to Tracy.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. It's great to join you today. I'm Tracy Newick, and my background includes more than 25 years experience leading HR teams and working with executive teams of large companies. A few years ago, I started TG HR Consulting, and we work with businesses to build effective and compliant HR programs and support the development of leaders, employees, and organizations. Our foundation is built on a belief that an engaged workforce drives business results and builds stronger communities. So let's look at navigating this COVID-19 environment. Change is inevitable, but I sure never saw this coming, and many of you didn't either. Many companies are scrambling to survive. We're doing the best we can, and the uncertainty and ever-changing government programs and policies available to support our businesses and our employees. A lot of this is very overwhelming. But I'm hopeful. We do know that on the other side, businesses will exist, and we will pull through this. Even though your organizational structures and workflow processes may look different, your missions and intentional communications with your employees will be more important than ever. I'm working with clients who are feeling the struggle of balancing keeping the doors open while trying to take care of their people. I'm starting to see missteps with employment practices and violations of employment law, and I'm concerned the fast reactions to cut staff or to change conditions of employment, benefits, teleworking policies are going to cost businesses by creating unplanned expenses and unexpected lawsuits. We definitely don't want to create more liability for ourselves at this time. I'll talk with you about a few of those today. We're going to talk about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and I will share with you my thoughts about setting up best practices to help you get the maximum tax credits to offset the paid employee leave expense. Nobody out there budgeted for this. This may affect your cash flow, but let's make sure that we recover these unplanned for expenses. We'll also touch base upon business strategy and creating smart teleworking policies and planning for a new normal. Guys, intentional communication is critical right now. Even though we are all scrambling to figure out what are the right decisions, please, let's remember that we are all doing the best we can. We need to be compassionate with ourselves and others as we walk through these uncharted waters together. So let's first look at the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. The FFCRA includes two components, emergency paid sick leave and emergency FMLA. All employers with less than 500 employees must comply with the new act. Keep in mind, not one employer budgeted for this new expense. Currently, these provisions of the new law apply for any claim made from time off work from April 1st through December 31st. But as we know, as with many other government programs, I would not be surprised if this program would be extended to 2021. So when you start looking at cash flow and budgets for your new year, just keep that in mind. Should an employee meet one of the 6 qualifying COVID-related conditions outlined in the Act, employers are expected to pay up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave and up to an additional 10 weeks of paid time off. This may be at a reduced rate, and that will be determined by whatever the qualifying reason is for the leave. But remember, there are posting requirements. A requirement of the Act is making sure that all of your employees know their rights. All employers were expected to post this employee rights notice by March 31st. Additionally, all employees who are teleworking should have been emailed a copy of this notice. And if you have not yet completed this process, I would really encourage you to get that done ASAP. And also be mindful that you should be notifying new employees throughout the year of their rights. So look at your employee handbooks or your company policies and make sure you're incorporating that language within those. And on the slide, you can see a sample poster, and I've included the link. You can go to the dol.gov website to get access to this, and it is in multiple languages. Well, there is good news. Employers will receive 100% reimbursement for paid leave pursuant to the Act. The reimbursement will be in the form of a payroll tax credit. So for example, let's say we have an employee who comes to you for a COVID-19 related condition, and they say that they can't work for 2 weeks. Hopefully they'll be calling you and not coming in person. And let's say they normally get paid $1,000 a week. The employee should complete your required documentation to make the request, and then they'll receive this paid leave through a normal payroll process. Prior to submitting your company's payroll taxes to the IRS, you will deduct the amount paid to the employee and use whatever documentation you've completed to justify that tax credit. I cannot stress enough how important it is to maintain complete documentation for this process. So it would be really terrible to provide this paid leave and not have a system to track it to get reimbursed. So what's your process to handle these requests? Have you even thought about it? So here's some ideas. Who is responsible for the program oversight? Often HR teams in large companies are already overloaded. And in small businesses, usually it's an office manager, GM, or owner who handle all of the HR paperwork and stuff. So it's really important to identify the person who is going to be your point person and oversees the administration of all these requests. So remember those missteps that I mentioned earlier. You need to really be careful about HIPAA. We are humans. People love drama. They love gossip. They love to be in the know. If managers and coworkers in the organization are openly speculating and talking about colleagues' medical conditions, you may be opening yourself up to HIPAA violations. Not to mention, how does gossip and speculation align with your commitment to company culture? At the same time, you have a business to run. Who's monitoring the utilization of leaves so that you can make sure you have enough staff to keep operations going? You need to have a really good, clear, definite communication strategy when it comes to talking about staffing levels and the need for new staff to cover absences. The climate is really uneasy right now. Even your most loyal employees may not be so inclined to look the other way if you overlook things, or if you make mistakes, or if you're not following the rules. Stress is high, money is tight, and the future is really uncertain. In my experience, these are the perfect ingredients for visits to attorneys' offices. So intentional communication is a key to success. There is a way through this. Make sure you build your solid foundation. Understand your requirements as an employer. Make sure you have communicated to the employees their rights. Have you updated your company handbooks? Have you updated written policies and job descriptions? Remember, everyone, ignorance is not a legal defense. Even though for many the priority is to keep the business alive and keep everyone healthy, strategy is so important right now. Make sure you're being strategic. Many employers have created opportunities for teleworking. I've got most of my clients right now have established some teleworking programs. I have a specific client who was able to provide telework for many employees, and we were awesome. We planned it out. We talked through what it looked like. We thought what would fit in with the culture and way of how we plan to communicate and have all these intentional communications with them, how we were going to keep touching base to make sure everyone was in line. We even put a written policy together. We had everybody sign the policy, and everyone started working from home. But we missed a very critical step. So please, when you set up your policies, don't miss this critical step. We were not clear about reimbursable expenses. So almost immediately, we were getting questions from our employees about, would you cover my internet expenses? Are you covering my cell phone expenses? Or what office supply expenses are you going to cover for me? So be mindful of that when you start setting up all of these different telework programs, that you know what you want to provide going in, and also that you're consistent with all of your employees. I actually had a friend of mine tell me the other day that their company got a call asking if a portion of the rent would be reimbursed, since they now were working from home and not in the office. So these are all very interesting things to think through. And the more you can be prepared ahead of time, the less reactionary you will need to be. So do you have a telework or virtual work policies? Have your employees reviewed and agreed to your expectations? I think it's super important to have structured check-in or virtual meeting times scheduled. You know, are we sure that people are going to be accountable to answer the phone when you call them? And keep in mind, guys, everyone is at home in very unique circumstances. They've got significant others who are working at home with them, children, pets, extended family members, and trying to navigate putting their kids online for school while they're doing work. Now is a really important time for you to be flexible in order to keep the productivity up. Intentional communication is key to success. Build a solid foundation. Make sure that you understand your requirements as employer and you've communicated these employees as a job. And my apologies, I think I've backtracked on you all. It's important that we look at employee benefits plans. Did you know that about 30% of your employment costs are tied to benefits? So it's really important that you are looking at your health benefits right now. Make sure that if you have more than 100 employees and you are currently on a fully insured health plan, There may be options for you to look at self-insurance. I've actually witnessed where some employers are able to save up to 30% of their health insurance premium by transitioning from fully insured to self-insured programs. After working with 401k plans for over 25 years, just last week I learned that if you lay off or terminate 20% of your workforce, you could partially terminate your 401k plan. So what are the consequences for partial termination? I had no idea that there were these kind of consequences. So many 401k plans, as many of you know, are set up with a vesting schedule on the employer match for 6 years. This is to encourage retention and to minimize cost for turnover. A consequence of partial termination is that all employees who are terminated from the plan are immediately vested at 100% for any employer match. So that means all that kickback on accounts you thought you might get are not going to happen. You're going to have to pay the full amount for the employer match. Even though this change will not impact immediate cash flow for your business, it may impact your budgeting for next year as the plan forfeitures will be reduced accordingly. Communication with your colleagues should always be respectful, consistent, effective, relevant, transparent, and authentic. I've been working with my clients with furloughed employees. You know, right now they're sitting at home. They know that they still will be recovered back and brought back to work when the economy recovers, but they're at home. They're uncertain about what the future brings. How are you reaching out to them? They're still your employees. What are you doing to keep them connected? Don't forget about them just because they're furloughed. We are all adjusting to new work environments. Many of your employees are feeling anxious, antsy, and fearful. Check in on them, provide them status updates. Even if you don't know what the future will bring, showing them you care will go a long way right now. You make a real difference. You have a unique opportunity to build a deeper trust in your organization by demonstrating compassionate leadership. You know, with others, when you're looking at your employees, your coworkers, your family members, provide flexibility. Make sure you're understanding to them and empathetic to them. Everyone is experiencing stress. And be kind to yourself. You are doing the best you can do in uncharted waters. Let's look forward. We're going to have a very different looking workplace as we start to resume normal business levels. It's important to start planning now. As we look forward, here are some tips or some thoughts I really want you to consider. What does your return to work plan look like for those who have been furloughed or telecommuting? What's the transition back into the workplace look like? How do we ensure that the people coming back to work are healthy? And when they return, what are your internal safety and housekeeping protocols? This is going to be a very difficult balancing act. And I'm really sure that OSHA will be providing some guidelines on this. I know they already have done some, but who in your organization is staying on top of all of those guidelines? Does your organizational chart look different? You may recognize through this process that having people telework might really work for your business. So perhaps we're looking at restructuring how your organization looks. Maybe you've identified that there are opportunities for new positions within your company. You may have incorporated some technology that has streamlined processes. What does that look like? Do you need to bring everyone back to work? And what are we going to do if the winter months bring back a new resurgence of COVID-19 related challenges? Guys, I don't think this is going to go away even in the short term. We've got to be planning for the next couple of years to figure out how we're going to navigate around these waters. And do you have the right technology systems in place? And are those technology systems secure? And Sean Connery can definitely help you with that. Please remember, you make a difference. I really appreciate your attention today. And a special thank you and a shout out to Matt and Nanette and Eide Bailly for hosting the webinar, and Sean and Kelly at Orbis Solutions for their participation. I wish you all well, and I'm happy to support you during this time. Please don't hesitate to reach out and stay well. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sean.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Connery, Sean Connery, just like the actor. And I am the co-founder and president of Orbis Solutions. And we're going to have a non-technical conversation on tech for your employees while they are working from home. So we're going to talk about the equipment that they're going to be using at home. I'll discuss some of the attacks that I'm seeing that are growing out there. Now that we've discussed the equipment of them working from home, how is it they're going to access your data, your applications? Meeting technologies have exploded. We'll talk about some planning that you could do, and most importantly, what is it you can do to protect yourself? But ultimately, what I'm going to cover is that your data and applications is very valuable to you. I'd like you to take a moment to visualize what would happen if there was a hardware failure or a cyber criminal had locked up all your data and your organization no longer had access to your data and applications. What would that mean to you and your business? A little about me. I have 2 #1 best-selling books on Amazon on cybersecurity. I'm an award-winning speaker at Microsoft and the Harvard Club of Boston. I have a lot of certifications, including the Certified Information Systems Security Professional, a Microsoft Certified System Engineer. And last year, I won an XP for Cybersecurity Today that was seen on those channels. Orbis Solutions is a managed security service provider. I'm sure you've heard of MSPs, managed service providers. Another way of saying it, an outsourced IT company. But we have a specialty within security. If you needed a heart surgery, you certainly wouldn't go to your general practitioner, but seek out someone who had that specialty. I'm sure most of you made this decision a month ago. What equipment do you want your employees to be using while at home? And perhaps this is a good time to revisit that and to confirm or maybe check to see if you've made the right decision. So allowing the employees to use their home devices, BYOD, I'm sure you've heard that term, and I'm sure you even have employees who are using their cell phones to access your company email. Home computers and the concerns. How is it you're going to expect your employees on their home equipment to keep up on security? Do they have the latest Windows updates? Do they have security software? Do they already have malware or bots or security threats already on their computer? Which brings you right into, do you want to allow your employees to transfer your data to their home computers? And if you do, what is the backup strategy on those home computers now? Another thought is you want to make sure they're not allowing others to use their computers, like their kids. For work computer, or providing a company corporate computer, as much as possible, you want to make sure that workers are not mixing work and leisure activities on the same device. And one of the concerns you may have is if, unfortunately, you have to furlough or term an employee, how do you get that equipment back? And just an FYI to everyone, we reached out to our insurance company and they informed us that we needed to make sure that all of our employees were using company-owned equipment while they were working from their house to maintain our insurance. So something you may want to confirm for yourselves with your provider. But now that we have our employees working from home, whether it be on home equipment or work equipment, the question now comes down is, what does a network look like at your employee's house? Their wireless router. We actually had customers whose employees had devices that were 7+ years old that were just so slow they really couldn't keep up with meeting technology or accessing their data. Are they updating the firmware? Do they have a non-default password so people aren't accessing their data? Speaking of which, who's on their wireless network? Have they allowed neighbors, guests, and others to jump on their network? Now, when it comes to attacks, the 2 big ones I'm seeing right now are phishing and wire transfer scams. Phishing is where we send an email to everyone and we're going to try to get you to click on it and provide us your username and password. The goal of phishing is getting your password so that I can just access your legitimate information. Wire transfer scams is where you get an email and says you need to wire this person some money. One of the original biggest ones was the toy company Mattel. They had a brand new CFO, and he got an email from the CEO to go and wire $1 million to a bank in China. Well, he was brand new. He wanted to ingratiate himself, so he actually sent that money off, and when he saw that CEO a few hours later at a company meeting, he let him know, hey, I got that done for you. I got that money out. Unfortunately, that was a wire transfer scam. The email did not come from the CEO. So this really is not a technical issue. This is going to be more of a internal policy and training issue. So we figured out what equipment we want them to use. So the question then comes down to, how do we want them to access the data? Do we want them to use a VPN, which is from home? They would use some software, or do they go to a website, they put in their username and password, it encrypts all that data, so when it goes across the internet, they're able to access your company data, your company applications. Sort of the problem with a VPN is you're actually putting that device on your network. So again, if it's a home computer and they are infected, you're putting them on your network, and now that infection can run across your network. The technology that is exploding of late is obviously moving your data to the cloud. There's Dropbox or Box. We're actually had switched previous to this in early March to a combination of SharePoint, which is a website that stores all your data, Microsoft Teams, and OneDrive. And it looks a little like this. We have a company landing page that all of our employees have access to, and you can see where I have our team files, where obviously Orbis banking might be allowed to accounting and to leadership, because we have all of those permissions, and we have confidence that those people that need access are getting the access, and those who do not are not. But SharePoint has all these files on a website, and sometimes that's not really the easiest to do, but we can click that sync button now, and it actually just brings it all right onto my local computer. And so this is something we're all used to seeing. This is a format we're used to seeing on my folders on my computer, and I can navigate and get to what I need to do. Meeting technology has just exploded. Microsoft Teams is the spear tip of their communications platform. It integrates so many different technologies into it. Everything from chatting to individuals, to groups of people, to hosting web meetings, to storing files, to being able to access what you need to access. Zoom, which is the platform we're on right now, last year had about 10 million people, both paid and free, using their service. And the CEO, being a good guy, offered this all to the first responders. And so that exploded to now over 200 million people using the service each and every day. Unfortunately, it's flushed out a bunch of security vulnerabilities in their system, where they're transferring the data through China on weak security. That, you've probably heard the term Zoom bombing by now, where people just jump into a meeting and they either yell profanity, or they show pornography, or they even put something in the chat that is actually gets people to click on it, and that's actually a virus. So there's a lot of security vulnerabilities. There are some fixes. Please research how to have a secure Zoom meeting. Google Hangouts is Google's version of that technology. Most schools, because of those security issues, have left Zoom, and most are either using Teams or Google Hangouts. So then it comes down to, we need to have a plan. You need to be able to provide an initial and then a regular feedback to staff on how to react in case of problems. That means information on who to call, hours of service, and emergency procedures. You need to provide virtual solutions. For example, use of electronic signatures. It's actually shocking that I came across a bank that did not have electronic signatures, and they had to set that up. You need to have virtual approval workflows to ensure continuous functionality. And then you need to define clear procedures to follow in case of a security incident. How do we protect ourselves? And I like to use the analogy of a house. It's something we can all get our heads wrapped around. Whether you realize it or not, that is through a process of protection, detection, response. Protection. We all have walls, doors, windows, gates, fences. Detection. An alarm system, motion sensors, smoke detector. And then response. Perhaps your community has a local security group, the police, and as a last resort, insurance. Now, when I ask a group, what is it you think is the most important? And I ask about response, a few people raise their hands, and you would be nearly right. That's the second most important. And when I ask about protection, most people here would raise their hands, and that is the third most important. I'm here to tell you that detection is the most important. Here's why. An FBI study on cybercrime revealed threats were in a victim's network for over 200 days. Most security companies only focus on protection like antivirus and firewalls that threats are getting past. It's only through early detection can you discover and detour these threats before they happen. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here. And if you're worried of how to reduce your exposure to cybersecurity hacks, please go to my website, orbissolutionsinc.com, and we'll be happy to audit your company. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to take a couple questions that have come in. Please, if you have a question, feel free to submit it now using the Q&A box below on your Zoom control panel. Matt, if you're available, we have a question that came in. It says, in a sinking ship situation, how transparent should you be with employees? Would it be easier to hide the situation based on having a virtual workforce?
Well, that's a great question. In my mind, I think during times of distress, I think employees will probably be talking with each other more than less. So my recommendation would be is do your analysis, have an off-site meeting with senior management, and then make a decision and be consistent throughout. I don't recommend doing things in phases. I would basically look at just deciding do the analysis, determine where you need to be, and then execute those and be transparent to everyone.
Okay, thank you. And Tracy, it looks like we have one for you. When we're looking to cut back schedules for all employees, how should we handle cutting hours for exempt employees?
That's a great question. So the first thing you need to do is remember that the pay for exempt employees is based on a work week. It's not based on hours. So an exempt employee, and actually remember this law changed effective January 1st this year. Exempt employees were paid on a work week of a minimum of $455 a week. And that was increased, and I think the number is to $684 a week, starting in January 2020. And I believe even some states may have different rates of pay. But if you plan to keep your employee in an exempt position, it's really important, even if you are cutting wages, that you don't go below that $684 per week. You may want to consider moving the person to a non-exempt position, but you definitely don't want to correlate hours worked to reducing pay, or you could consider actually reducing pay salary across the board, as long as you don't go under that $684 per week. And this is one of those, there's a lot of moving parts in that question. So I definitely would suggest you engage closely with your, HR partner, business partner, and labor attorney. And of course, I'm always available if you guys have any questions on that.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we have a couple more. Sean, if employees are using their home computers, how do I address security concerns that you brought up? Is it true that Zoom goes through China? ?
Well, when it comes to home computers, I would definitely impress upon employees that they're part of the company, and as part of the company, the data is important to the company and it's important to everyone. if you have an internal IT organization, I would probably get them to go ahead and start reaching out to the people while working at home and installing the security tools on there, the antivirus, the endpoint protection, make sure they're patched. The same would be true even if you had a company like us, a managed service provider. I would talk to them and see if you get them to extend. I know Orbis reached out to all of our customer business owners, and we offer to reach out to everyone at home and install all of our security tools, and we put them in a different group. And we're going to go ahead and extend those tools for free while, through this crisis. And as for the Zoom data going through China, it does go through China, yes.
Hey, Sean, I have a question. Was the CFO of Mattel fired?
He was not. It happened during a Chinese holiday, and that's what saved them. They were able to work with China. They actually have a lot of manufacturing in China. We were able to work with the Chinese authorities, get to the bank, and stop and save the money there. But I have so many customers or horror stories where people are unfortunately, they get an email, it says transfer the money, they go and do it. If you watch Shark Tank, you know Barbara Corcoran, I believe her name is. She just had an accountant receive an email to go and wire 400 grand to a Chinese bank, and she did. And it's just very common how many times I get examples. Is this email? Have we been hacked? You haven't been hacked. They're just spoofing it. It's a non-technical thing. They just get in and send you a thing, and it could be anything from an Apple iTunes card to Greenbuck cards to all the way up to just wire this money.
Wow, well, good for him. That would appear to sounded like a CLM kind of a career limiting maneuver there. So thank you.
We have a question if we're going to be providing a copy of this PowerPoint for today's presentation. Are you guys all willing to share this presentation? Or I'm sorry, it's kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, and I know some people were asking if this was being recorded. I know Matt had mentioned that briefly. It is being recorded, and we are going to provide it so we can provide the PowerPoint slides. And then we had another question come in really quick as I'm reading. What are your thoughts from the panel on tools like Time Doctor and On the Clock that monitor screens for workers at home?
So you're gonna let me take that one, huh? I think that it really depends on your company culture. And I think that it is very reasonable with a remote work situation to use these tools to monitor work. At the same time, like as I was talking about the compassionate leadership, be mindful though, guys, that maybe sometimes people are going to be popping in and out if they've got distractions at home. And I actually see, and this is a whole other webinar for another time, another topic for another webinar, I guess, is I actually see that as the future, as we evolve with using telecommuting, that pay models are going to completely change. It's going to be tied more to pay per performance instead of clocking so many hours. But that's another, so I think that these tools are, so to answer your question, I think that they're good tools. But I think that companies, employers need to be flexible and understanding and make sure there's good two-way communication around those tools.
And this is Matt. I think from a process perspective, I think the world will be changing. And my recommendation is it all depends on the task. But for me, I've always, when I was a CFO, I went by a rule where I didn't really care if my employees were there or not, or where they were. I had a great understanding of what they were supposed to accomplish either on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And basically I just then I didn't care. And I think that with the virtual workforce, I think that's going to become more prevalent. It's going to be incumbent upon the company to put the processes in place. That performance will be based on productivity, and it won't be based on hitting punching out a clock and things of that nature. So I think that once again goes to the fact that if you should start to look at your processes and start to adhere them to where you can go to a virtual workforce if necessary or during a time of crisis, and basically just have it based on productivity and end results.
Yeah, and one more quick point, also be mindful if you are tracking hourly employees' workflow, that would be okay. But if you start measuring time of your exempt employees, that could be problematic. You want to check with your counsel on that.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we do not have any other questions that have, oops, hold on. Okay, so this one is for Tracy. The FFCRA, how critical are medical doctor notes? Can employees require them to certify the FFCRA reasons for the leave? We have a current employee who sought COVID-19 diagnosis, and within 3 days were given a negative diagnosis. Would they only be eligible for the 3 days?
You know, every state is mandate, and actually even counties in every state are mandating different rules on the doctor's notes. But it sounds like on the surface that the 3 days would be all you would be obliged to if they've been cleared. And we can talk offline so I can get more information if you'd like to give me a call.
I think those are all the questions we have currently. I don't know if you guys want to wait on the line for a couple minutes, or people can reach out to you if they have additional questions. I know the contact's on the screen.
Yeah, I think that should do it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end today's presentation. Like we mentioned, we are recording this, and we will be sending that out with a copy of the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.